Okay, so good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and thank you very much for taking time out of your day to listen to this little webinar, which is all about coaching with mindfulness. So the idea of this session is kind of trying to touch on what mindfulness is and the benefits of it, but in particular, its application to mindfulness. And then at the end, I'm going to touch on a particular program that we're offering, but hopefully it'll be useful to anyone, whether you choose to do the program or not. So these are the kind of things that you'll discover, as I mentioned, for people who are absolute beginners to the concept of mindfulness. I'm going to take a little bit of time to explain what mindfulness is. And this more newer concept, I suppose, which is this idea of mindful coaching, particularly using mindfulness if you're working one-to-one or in small groups, and slightly leaning towards the workplace, but it can also be used in the general context too. Also be talking about some techniques that you can use just from listening to this webinar and going off and using some mindfulness techniques. So if you're quite experienced, you're a mindfulness teacher, you've been coaching for some years already and you've done a lot of training, then you may take away a few little things about how to coach with mindfulness too. Some of the benefits of practicing mindfulness on a regular basis, I'll kind of touch on that, not too much, but a little bit I'll touch on that. And finally, I'll finish off with our program that we're starting pretty soon. And it's a 12-month program in Coach called Coach Mindful. So first of all, I would like to emphasize the fact that mindfulness is very popular at the moment. And I was just looking a little bit of research, doing a bit of research myself online just to show you how popular it is and why it's so important to be trained in this if you are a coach. So last week on BBC Horizon, I think it was on Wednesday, there was at prime time a program all about improving your level of positivity. Actually, they took someone who's a pessimist and he went off to a scientist, and the majority of the training that they decided to use was mindfulness. And they did brain scans before and after, and they found that mindfulness was really effective in changing the parts of the brain that were associated with being pessimistic. And just the 8-week training in mindfulness with some other small cognitive behavioral type technique found that he turned from being a pessimist to an optimist. His insomnia reduced. He had lots of other positive benefits. And this has really put mindfulness back onto the nation's kind of thoughts. And I've had lots of people applying for all sorts of different things and lots of interest in mindfulness coming from this. But this is just one example of many, many others that keep pushing mindfulness up and up. There's lots of organizations that are using mindfulness. The most famous in the world is probably Google, and they've taken mindfulness in quite a big way. Their program, which is called Search Inside Yourself, and I'll show you a blog post about it, is the most oversubscribed course that they offer to employees at Google. When they put it out online to say that the next course is available for booking, it gets booked up within a minute, or I think less than a minute. It's a really, really good program. The guy who developed it has written a book which was a #1 New York Times bestseller. And so when an organization like Google embraces mindfulness so strongly, lots of people pay attention. So that's another reason why it's become very popular. But a lot of the technology companies, but not only the technology companies, companies like General Mills, eBay, banks, a lot of banks, both in the US, but also in the UK as well, use it. London Transport here in London is using mindfulness and finding lots of benefits and cost savings in it. And I work with a few law firms, and the law firms are also interested in mindfulness. But the list is literally hundreds of companies that I could show you which are offering mindfulness at the moment. And part of the reason is there's lots of brain research behind it, as well as all sorts of other types of research showing the benefits. The most famous and prestigious university in the UK, training people and having a centre, is the University of Oxford, who've got a centre for mindfulness. And they've found through various brain scans and other pieces of research that it improves focus, sense of resilience against stress, and improves the sense of well-being. So I'm going to, and I just did a little bit of research on Google Trends. I'm also going to show you some other bits and pieces to just give you an example of the popularity of it before we go into more about the coaching aspect. I'm just going to go into the internet. So this is a little example of a typical blog post when I typed in mindfulness. So Forbes magazine have had many articles on mindfulness. This is one typical example. You can see how popular it is in terms of shares and tweets. But Google, this is the program that I was talking about, the the program at Google called Search Inside Yourself, which is written by Meng. There's that New York Times bestseller that I mentioned. And so it's really part of the mainstream. If you've got something like Forbes magazine sharing the benefits of mindfulness, that just shows you the popularity of it. Then I mentioned that Oxford teaches mindfulness, and here it is. Here's the Oxford Mindfulness Centre's website, and that shows you all sorts of research happening, and there's a whole section here on the science of mindfulness. You can even do a master's degree in mindfulness here. The guy who started this centre, who's called Mark Williams, he also started a centre at the University of Wales, which is where I did my initial training for 3 years in mindfulness. But that just gives you an idea of the amount of funding that's going into it. This centre is dedicated to mindfulness research. If you look on Amazon this week, type in self-help. The number one book on self-help is a book on mindfulness. The second book in self-help in the UK on Amazon is by Ruby Wax, which is also about mindfulness and how she's using mindfulness to help her to manage her difficult emotions and things that are coming up. And then you've got Nobel Prize winner coming in at number 3, Thinking Fast and Slow, by Daniel Kahneman. So as you can see, it's really, really popular at the moment. So that's why if I was a coach, I certainly would train in mindfulness at this point if that interested me. Another example to show you a bit of a trend of what's going on in mindfulness, there's a website called Google Trends, and you can search the different terms and how popular they are. And you can see if you take something like life coaching, there's fairly low levels of research, low searches, and it's kind of stayed in that way. If you look at something like mindfulness, which is the one in blue, started off quite low back in 2005, and it's now reached up to 40 on a scale up to 100. And what was very popular back in 2004-5 is NLP, and that's gradually reducing popularity, and it seems to be kind of leveling off, almost the same level as mindfulness. And I know a lot of people use NLP very effectively, especially coaches, and they continue to get lots of benefits in it. But this graph just goes to show that mindfulness is also something that's particularly important, and if you're a coach, then the level of searches for NLP is pretty much the same as it is for mindfulness now, for the first time ever. So I think this is a critical point in which to train in mindfulness if you're thinking about doing so. So that gives you a little bit of an idea of the level of interest in it currently, not just in the UK, but actually globally. So if you're absolutely new to mindfulness, you might be wondering, okay, this chap's going on about mindfulness a lot, and I'm the author of Mindfulness For Dummies, if you didn't know, so he's very much supportive of mindfulness. He's looked at it a lot. What actually is mindfulness? Well, the actual definition of mindfulness is different depending on which teacher that you look at or which book you look at, but there's certain general commonalities between them all, which is one of the things that I picked out when I did research in mindfulness. And the first thing is it involves learning to pay attention. So that's like something that your teachers would have told you when you're at school, when you're looking out the window. They'd be saying to you, pay attention. And the reason for that is that if any learning you're hoping for learning to take place, then you need to be able to pay attention. And although you are paying attention, if you're looking out the window, you're not paying attention to what you're supposed to be paying attention to in that classroom. So mindfulness is actually a training in paying attention. It actually develops that part of your brain which is to do with focus. We just expect children and adults to be able to automatically pay attention. But as you may have noticed in our modern everyday culture, it's very easy for our attention to be drawn into something where it isn't supposed to be. And the great thing is, and the reason we're really fortunate with the brain is that the brain's very plastic. It can change very easily. And the more common research now, and the very much more accepted research, is that the brain can change itself actually very rapidly. And I've seen bits of research showing that doing mindfulness for actually about 15-20 minutes a day for 2 weeks can show changes in the brain. And I would suspect that even less practice than that, so maybe 5 or 10 minutes a day done for a few weeks, you'd start to see visible changes in the brain when you looked at brain scans. So mindfulness is about learning to pay attention, and learning to pay attention in the present moment, so the here and now. Most of the time when we're thinking, we're either lost in the past and kind of replaying past events, or we're planning things in the future. And that's all very well and good if our attention's there, But the research is showing that about 50% of our waking day is spent thinking about past and future. Now, that's a huge chunk of time. I mean, 5% may make sense, or maximum 10%, I would say, but to spend half of your day lost in thoughts and planning about the future means that you're spending a massive chunk of your time not in the here and now. And mindfulness, however long you choose to practice it, is an opportunity to come back to the here and now. So they've found there's two parts of the brain. One part of your brain is the storytelling part of the brain, which is to do with the whole past and future and the story of your life and how things are going and what's going well and your positive and your negative thinking and all other types of thinking. And then there's another part of your brain which is to do with the connecting with your senses, seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, touching, being conscious in the here and now. And if you're paying attention to what I'm saying at the moment, then this is an example of mindfulness, an example of being present. If you're lost in thoughts about what I'm saying, that's an example of mindlessness. Mindlessness, yeah. But mindfulness is not just about paying attention in the present moment, because you could be paying attention in the present moment and feeling really angry and really frustrated and self-critical, or you could be like a sniper and you're really in the present moment to try and kill someone. This is not what mindfulness is about. It's also about bringing mindful attitudes. And one of the key mindful attitudes, probably one of the most important, is a sense of kindness and warmth and friendliness to ourselves. If you've ever stopped to take a look at your mind, then it's quite easy for our brains to focus on anything that's happened that's gone wrong and that's negative, far more than positive. It's called the negative bias, and it's kind of like a genetic trait, not just for some people, but for human beings as a whole. For example, let's say that you couldn't start your car in the morning or something went wrong with your car. The rest of the day, that thought would pop into the mind several times. Whereas if your car started and you were able to go to work, the fact that your car was working would not be a big deal and your brain wouldn't think about it. So our brain is actually biased to think about negative things more than positive. And lots of people have tried forcing positive thinking, but that's not working uh, anywhere near as effective as something like mindfulness. You can see much clearer changes in the brain happening through practicing mindful exercises than trying to just force positive thoughts, which you don't even really believe in. And there's lots of research to back that up. Mindfulness also develops a sense of curiosity and openness. So you try to become a bit more curious about your world. So let's say if you're taking a walk in the park on a nice summer's day. Yesterday here in the UK, it was nice and sunny. And if you had the ability to be mindful, you'd be able to switch off from your normal daily week and tune into what's going on. The beautiful blue skies, the clouds, the gentle breeze, the sound of the birds. I went for a walk yesterday with one of my friends, and it was very easy for him to keep getting distracted by text messages and what was going on in Facebook and thoughts about his work. And that kind of thing means that if you're constantly thinking in that type of way, your mind is not going to be able to rest properly for the working week. So mindfulness is about developing a sense of curiosity, being a bit more interested about how your mind is, the state of your mind, where your attention's going, and actually being interested in your surroundings too, rather than just being caught up in your own little world. The third final key attitude is a sense of acceptance. And acceptance is so important in mindfulness that sometimes when they're talking about therapies, they call it mindfulness-based therapies, and sometimes they call them acceptance-based therapies. That's how valuable acceptance is and what key aspect acceptance is as part of mindfulness. And by acceptance, I don't mean just accepting everything as it is, but learning to accept emotions in particular. Okay, we're always going through positive and negative emotions. That's just the natural cycle of being a human being. But what they've found is that if you could learn to accept your present moment emotions rather than fighting with them, rather than becoming stronger and overtaking you, they dissolve in the long term. Okay, it's a part of the mind called the doing mode of mind, and they can actually see the patterns in the brain when you tune into doing mode of mind compared to being mode of mind. And you learn more about this as you read more books about mindfulness, which I don't have time to go into at the moment. But the part of your brain to do with processing emotions becomes more effective when you use mindfulness. And if you have time, then do check out that BBC Horizon program, which was on Wednesday, and it's probably on BBC iPlayer if you're in the UK, and you can find out more about that. So the thing about mindfulness is you need to be able to experience it rather than just talk about it to really get an idea of what it's all about. So I'm going to guide you in a very simple 3-minute mindfulness exercise. And if you're willing to have a go at this, then just continue listening. If you don't want to do the mindful exercise, then you can continue thinking as you may normally do. But for those that want to try, just begin by sitting in a comfortable posture. So if you're using headphones, then just loosen them a bit. You need to be able to hear me, but apart from that, I mean, for some of you, you may want to pull out your headphones and listen on loudspeaker using the speakers of your computer. That's fine. So finding a posture that you're comfortable with, but not slouching too much. So you're sitting in a kind of an upright posture with your feet firmly on the floor. And you may like to begin this exercise by keeping your eyes open. Just looking at this image in front of you, seeing those waves, the little island in the horizon, and the image of the sky. Noticing the various colours and bringing that quality of curiosity we were talking about earlier. Being curious of those various colours and the various images that are present. And then when you're ready, just allowing your eyes to gently close. And tuning into your bodily sensations, so feeling your feet on the floor, noticing what that feels like. Noticing the weight of your body on the chair, and the touch of perhaps the back against the back of your chair. And you may notice certain aches and pains in the body or tensions. That's okay, you don't need to change it, you just need to be aware of it. That's what mindfulness is about. So just noticing that. Now noticing or tuning into how you're feeling at the moment, noticing the emotion. You may be feeling excited or calm or sad or frustrated, or maybe you're neutral. So just tuning in to find out how you're feeling at the moment. And actually feeling that emotion in your body if you can. Always just practicing as best you can. And now becoming aware of your thoughts. So thinking is happening all the time, but now see if you can bring an attitude of watching your thinking, as if you're the watcher or the observer, and you're watching the thoughts popping up in your head. You may have lots of thoughts or no thoughts at all. Whatever it is okay. Just becoming aware of what thoughts are arising for you now, without having to act on them, just watching. Good. Now, your mind may have become caught up in a certain thought, or maybe you had no thoughts at all. It's okay. Whatever happened, gathering your attention now, gathering your attention and bringing your focus to your breathing. So you can feel your breathing around your nose or chest or your belly, wherever you can feel it. Just focusing your attention on the breathing there. Feeling the whole duration of the in-breath and the whole duration of the out-breath. Less than a minute. Just feeling the breath as best you can today. If you can't feel your breathing at all, then maybe placing your hand on your belly and seeing if you can feel the movement of your belly in and out as you breathe in and out. Good. And just bringing your attention back if your mind has wandered, which is quite natural and normal to do. Now expanding your awareness to your whole body in this last few moments of this practice. Just getting a sense of your whole body as you're sitting here. And just getting a sense of your body just gently expanding as you breathe in and contracting as you breathe out. Just bringing your attention back if your mind has wandered. Now, when you're ready, just bringing this little mindful exercise to a close by gently opening your eyes if they've been shut. Noticing how your body feels after these 3 or 4 minutes. Just having a gentle stretch, stretching your arms, wiggling your toes, fingers, coming back into the room. Just having a reflection for a few moments how you found that experience. And if you'd like to say something on the audio, then let me know and I'll switch on your microphone and you can share your experience. I'll wait about 10 or 15 seconds. If anybody wants to share their experience, then I'm happy to listen to that and to answer any questions that you may have. So if you let me know in the chat window. Okay, so it sounds like we're all happy with that, and do feel free to ask questions later on about that if you're doing that mindfulness exercise for the first time and you're curious about it. So that was a little example of a mindfulness exercise. It's actually called a breathing space meditation if you haven't done it before, and that's a nice little exercise to use as a coach with your client. If you're experienced as a mindfulness teacher, to help them get into a different state of mind and start tuning into this being mode of mind rather than this constant doing and achieving. That's very valuable, but it's good to also have our being mode of mind accessible too. So that little exercise, when you've done it, if we could do a brain scan, we could probably see a difference in your brain. And if you do it regularly, those parts of the brain to do with living in the present moment and being more focused would be getting stronger, and we're able to see that as more permanent changes anyway. Okay, so why do we teach mindfulness in the workplace? Well, this is a well-researched diagram that's often cited when we talk about stress. And if our levels of boredom our level of demands are quite low and our stress is very low and we don't have much to do, then we can end up feeling quite bored. But as our level of demand goes up, as it is for most people, you become stimulated and you get to a point where you're feeling effective or working at your optimum. So what you want to do with performance is that you want to be around here somewhere. So you're working at your optimum and then having some rest and then coming back here. But what tends to happen nowadays in the modern workplace, and not even just the workplace, but in all sorts of circumstances, is that we go way past this optimal into the areas of feeling anxious, irritable, and sadly for quite a lot of people working in the city, it leads to burnout. So, and when you get to this kind of stage, you're talking about some serious illnesses coming on, serious mental health issues happening, and it takes months, if not years, to be able to recover properly. It's a very dangerous state to be in. So mindfulness can actually help you to shift back up here. So if you're in this kind of area, it can actually lower your levels of stress, be more present, and work at more effective and optimum levels for the same demand. So you can actually shift it more to the left. And also for people who feel bored or kind of lonely and sad or in that kind of state of mind, it can actually lift you up from that too. And to such an extent that mindfulness is being used on the National Health Service in the UK for depression. So um, that's one of the reasons, one of the many reasons for bringing mindfulness to your clients. So I'd like to reflect for a moment about what actually makes a good coach. So we're talking about probably more leaning towards an executive coach or a coach working in the workplace, a leadership coach. I seem to have a lot of leadership coaches now training with me to learn mindfulness. What actually makes a good coach though? Whether you're a life coach or an executive coach or working in some other context, what actually makes a good one? I'd like you to reflect on that for a moment. And again, please use the chat window to share your answers. I'd like to make this a little bit interactive if I can. So just have a little reflection and just type it in. What do you think makes a good coach? I'm going to be starting to give some answers straight away, but as I do so, please feel free to answer your ideas. So first of all, I think what makes a good coach is one of the most fundamental aspects is being able to listen effectively. So if you've got your client in front of you and you're half paying attention or you're three quarters paying attention and part of your attention keeps going off into your own ideas, your own thoughts or the other things you want to do, so you're not fully present with your client, then you're not going to be able to coach effectively because the listening is not taking place. Mindfulness is shown to grow the parts of the area to do with focus and attention. So by practicing mindfulness, it makes you a better coach because your listening is more effective. So that's the first step and the reason as to why mindfulness is linked with this. Secondly, as a coach, you're more likely to be more calm and focused if you are practicing mindfulness or have practiced some mindfulness or a mindful exercise before the session. Imagine if you went to see a coach and the coach was a little bit agitated, a bit distracted, feeling a little bit stressed. You wouldn't really feel comfortable talking about your more deep-seated issues or your challenges in front of you if your coach is feeling in that way. So it's really good to be in a good frame of mind. And again, mindfulness is a good solution for that. Another thing that people want from coaching is they want to raise their level of well-being. They may say that explicitly, or it may be an internal thing. So they may have come to you for improving their performance or improving their profits or whatever it is. But underneath that, there would all be an interest in becoming happy or raising well-being, in my opinion anyway. And the great thing about mindfulness is it's shown that it creates these shifts in the brain leaning towards the left front prefrontal cortex, which is to do with raising well-being. Okay, it directly creates that. So that's why I would also recommend mindfulness for the coach and the client because it can actually offer that. I'm just looking at one of the answers that one person said. Empathy and listening is one of the key things for a coach. Yeah, empathy is a good one actually, and I haven't emphasized that enough. I mentioned the kindness a little bit, but I'm glad you mentioned that. Thanks, Kay. Yeah, mindfulness can also increase your level of empathy. So, in fact, there was a really interesting research they did with doctors in New York, where they took a group of doctors and they taught them mindfulness, and their patients said that they felt that they were spent more time with them and they had more empathy for them, so they felt more cared for. And even though the amount of time they'd spent with their patients was the same, the patients felt that the doctor had spent more time with them. So thanks for mentioning that one. Yeah. Um, Mindfulness can also improve the performance of the client because if that client is more mindful, you're more productive and they're using their time more effectively. Nowadays, it's so easy to get distracted by Twitter, Facebook, text messages, and other technological devices, and that just immediately starts to lower performance. Whereas if you can reduce your stress and anxiety, like I mentioned in the previous slide, your level of performance is going to be higher, and you're going to be able to improve the performance of your client too as they become more mindful. Another interesting one that I feel has developed through my learning of mindfulness and as a coach is that your level of intuition becomes a bit more fine and I think you can just notice it a bit more. So this is more of a subtle aspect of coaching, but a lot of coaches use what their intuitive thoughts are to help their client to move forward. But intuition, if you think about it, is always a bodily sensation. So it's something like a gut feeling or a feeling in your chest. And mindfulness really helps to develop your awareness of your own bodily sensations, which helps to ground you in the present moment, but I feel also helps you to become more intuitive. So if your client is in front of you and they're saying something, you can start to tune into the solutions that would be most appropriate for them. Obviously, a good coach is someone who would have energy too, and thinking involves a lot of energies, and a lot of that energy can be wasted if we're thinking all the time. If you're mindful, you pay less attention to the constant stream of thoughts that are going through your head, but learn to shift your attention in the present moment. So I know for myself personally, as I've been practicing mindfulness and meditation, my level of energy has really gone up, and I'm a lot more focused. And a lot of people I've spoken to that have done mindfulness have said exactly the same thing too. Um, Partly because sleep improves as well. And then you've got this intangible quality of presence, which is so important in a coach, as well as any person living in our everyday society or in the workplace, that ability to be really present and to have presence. And if you're living in the present moment, then you're much more likely to have that presence. And as a coach, you're more likely to have it too. It's intangible, but extremely important and valuable. And I think mindfulness can make an important contribution to that. So, if you have done some training or you're a mindfulness teacher already and you want to learn about how to coach with mindfulness, I'm going to touch on this a bit so to give you some ideas of how this can be done. So, as a beginner, if you're not a mindfulness person to start with, you need to learn mindfulness, and you can go off and do this in your own area with doing an 8-week mindfulness course, or you could do one of our online mindfulness courses if you don't want to do the coach training, for example. But there's all sorts of different trainings that you can do. I would recommend with the guidance with a teacher or online to help you start the journey of learning mindfulness. In fact, use the modality that works for you. If you like reading books and you're able to follow that and you think that works for you, then you can do that. If you want to be coached to learn mindfulness on a one-to-one basis and you want someone to teach you one-to-one, go for that. But I would strongly recommend you make a decent investment of your time and your money to learn mindfulness well, because it's such an important skill. Um, it's so closely linked to the quality of our lives and the quality of what we can achieve. So it's worth learning properly. Once you've learned it, as a coach, if you want to be a mindfulness coach, first of all, practice mindfulness before you go anywhere near starting to teach mindfulness. If you want to be an effective mindfulness coach without practicing mindfulness, it's just not going to happen. Just like you can't get fit just thinking about the gym, you need to actually go to the gym and do the work or do the running or do the physical activity necessary to become fit. So with mindfulness, if you're going to be a mindful coach, you need to put the work in to do the mindfulness. If you really don't want to go down the route of stopping and practicing meditation every day, then you want to be able to live in a mindful way, which is doing mindful walking, mindful running, bringing your mindful awareness when you're with your children, taking a conscious effort to shift your attention into the present moment whenever you notice your mind has wandered. But really, if you want to go down this in any kind of serious way, you do need to be able to stop for a few minutes every day at least, and that helps to deepen your mindful awareness. The next step is actually guiding short mindful exercises with your client. And most clients are open to this. So if you tell them a little bit about mindfulness and what mindfulness is and why you think it would be helpful for them, and then say, I'd like to start with next week with a 5-minute mindful exercise. Most of the people are open to that. And when you do a mindful exercise, if you're a mindful teacher and you're able to do that, you can actually answer their questions. You end up getting into more of a mindful present state, and so does your client. You're both there, you're both in the moment. And so rather than wasting that coaching session with the client talking about whatever pops into that his or her head, or you offering advice, just what happens to be popping into your head, you're really present, you're really aware. You can take a step back and ask and reflect on the bigger questions. And it's those questions that help to move that coaching session forward. You can also offer, if you become a more skilled mindfulness coach or teacher, actually bring mindfulness within the coaching session when you think it's appropriate. So if you can feel, for example, your clients becoming anxious, or him or her is focusing on or going down a route or a story of the past, which is actually quite self-limiting. You can say to them, hey, we've learned some mindfulness. Would it be okay if right now we stopped and I guided you in a breathing space meditation, or I guided you in the stop mindful exercise? Let's just stop for 1 minute and do that, and then look at this from a different perspective and see what comes up. So again, rather than wasting time going down the same old thoughts, the whole old channels, old conversations, you can actually change the state of mind of your client in a scientifically proven way on a regular basis to help them to move forward, which is why I think it's so valuable. So you could do things like there's all sorts of other mindful exercises like the body scan, for example, that you could do within the session. You could also give mindful home experiments for your clients to do. So you could say this week, this is the mindfulness book they're going to be working through, and I could recommend some to you. And here's the CD. Have a go at trying track 3 this week. Practice it every day as you're on the train going to work. And next week or next month, we'll talk about what effect that has. That's a fantastic way of bringing mindfulness into your coaching session without actually using up the too much time in the session itself. They're actually integrating practical exercises into their everyday life, and it's simply a matter of putting it on their phone or using their iPod or whatever, actually practicing mindfulness in an effective way. There's other mindful exercises you can do. There's things called habit releases. There's the mindful walking I've mentioned already. You can even get them doing some mindful stretching if they've got some pain in their body they need to overcome, or they just spend too much time sitting. All sorts of things that can be done. And you can explicitly teach mindfulness to your clients. So you could actually, if you're fully qualified in mindfulness coaching and teaching, you can actually go through an 8-week program with them or a 6-week program. One of the things that people do from the courses that I run, the teacher training, is they develop their own program as an assignment. And so you can actually use that program with your client, or you can develop it yourself if you wish. Or a 6 or 8-week program I would recommend, where you do mindfulness every week when you meet your client and you actually train them in mindfulness. So that's really taking it to the next level. So some of the kind of exercises that you could use as a mindfulness coach is a short body scan. So a body scan is where you kind of turn your attention to your bodily sensations, and they're normally 30 to 45 minutes. But nowadays you can learn to adapt them, and in our program you learn to do more shorter ones, which can be about 10 minutes long, 5 minutes long, or even shorter if you wish. So that's one skill that you can teach your clients to help them to come into the present moment. There's another one called an expanding awareness exercise, which is sometimes called a sitting meditation, which is awareness of your breath, then your body, then expanding to sounds, and then tuning into your own thoughts and emotions, which is like a slightly longer version of the 3-minute one we did earlier. And then really opening up to what is called open awareness or choiceless awareness. That's another exercise. I mentioned mind walking already. Stop exercise stands for stop, T for take a breath, O for observe, and P to proceed. So let's say you're working with a client and he's got an aggressive boss, or she's got an aggressive boss, and the boss says something which puts them into a really negative frame of mind, and they normally get into an argument with their boss. You could teach them a stop exercise, so they go off to the bathroom, go away to a quiet place somewhere, wherever it is, do this stop exercise for 3 minutes. They're in a different state of mind. Rather than speaking from their anger, they're speaking from this place of calmness and focus, which doesn't mean that they stop being assertive, but they assert themselves in a more appropriate way rather than letting that assertion turn into aggression. Very, very important and useful skill. Um, very valuable, not just for in the workplace, but at home, for relationships, and most life-saving actually when you talk about people who are suffering from anxiety and depression. And rather than spiraling down into the depression and anxiety, they learn to catch it, nip it in the bud, and do this stop exercise before it gets worse. Okay. Someone's got their hand up. I'll just go through this and then I'll answer your question. The breathing space, which is a 3-minute exercise, which you've already practiced earlier. That's a really valuable practice to do. I'd love to hear how you found that process. But if you do that one regularly, a few times a day, just over a couple of weeks, you'll begin to start noticing changes. And if you don't, then quite often other people do. There's also a gratitude exercise you could do. So you could actually ask your client to write down 3 things they're grateful for every day for the next couple of weeks. And there's good research to show the benefits of that exercise. So you can just take that away. If you just listen to this webinar and nothing else, and you haven't done that before, you can just go off and try that. Get your clients doing a gratitude exercise. And if they're thinking of 3 different things they're grateful for every day and writing down in a journal for 2 weeks, you're going from that negative bias that I talked about in your brain to thinking about what's going well. And that's going to put you in a different frame of mind. I've been using this with clients for years. And once they start using it, they start saying that, hang on, I've started to, in my normal everyday life, start looking out for things to be grateful for so that I can write it in my gratitude journal. That creates a totally different state of mind. Lots of benefits of that. Self-compassion, which is links to mindfulness, again, there's lots of exercises you can give to your clients for that. One example that you could do is to ask them to treat themselves in the same way as a good friend would treat them. So quite often we're so self-critical. Let's say you were giving this webinar, you're giving this PowerPoint presentation, and something went wrong and you felt it went really bad. And your normal tendency may be for the next half an hour or hour to brood about it and to think about the negative things, about how badly you did it. You should have been more organized. If you had prepared properly, then it would have worked better. But if you asked if a friend was talking to you, your friend wouldn't say that. Your friend would say, hey, you gave it your best shot. It was your first try. Things go wrong. And you learn to speak to yourself in that same way. So in that more self-compassionate and caring way rather than an aggressive way. And there's some really good evidence to show that actually self-compassion is more beneficial than self-esteem. And there's a researcher called Dr. Christine Neff, who's actually giving a workshop later on in August in this country, but who's based in America, who's written a book called Self-Compassion. And so there's all sorts of self-compassion exercises you could do, and I'd like to bring some of that in the coach training that I'm going to be offering too. I think it's going to be really important in the future in terms of popularity. Also, with mindful coaching, there's the whole realm of working in a mindful way. So learning to give attention. So for example, when I'm doing a piece of work, learning to switch off email, switch off your phone, switch off everything else. And you're just doing one thing at a time, which is called single tasking rather than multitasking. Lots of good evidence to show the benefits of that rather than multitasking, which people used to talk about as being the best way forward. Mindful meetings, learning to have a short mindful exercise before and after. But also being clear on the agenda and just some sensible things. I think that's a mindful approach too. Presenting in a mindful way is quite often for people learning techniques to reduce anxiety. So rather than focusing on your own anxiety, you acknowledge that, you learn to bring acceptance to it, but then you give attention to your audience. You listen to them, you look at their facial expression, and then the way you deliver your presentation is adapted by that. Mindful use of technology I've already touched on. But it's about learning to switch off rather than being constantly connected. Yes, we live in a constantly connected world, but that's only if we turn and switch everything on. And we are allowed to switch things off, and we can set boundaries to a certain extent anyway. So it's about learning to be able to do that. Okay, someone's got a question here, so let me see if I can do that. Kik, you got a question? I'll switch your audio on and you can speak. Hi.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you. I was just starting with your book, the workbook for dummies.
Great,
Excellent.
great, thank you. Did you have a question?
No, I'm progressing very fast, I must say, during the last two weeks.
Okay.
I'm much more there, or here, sorry.
Here and there is the same thing. So you've been working through the Mindfulness for Dummies book, and you're finding you're living in a more present, focused kind of way, are you?
Exactly, and I remember my dreams since a long time.
Say that again?
I remember in the morning, I remember my dreams since a long time. And also in discussions, it's much better. It's more alert and really it's fabulous. It's almost what I experienced in the past with transcendental meditation about 30 years ago, but disappeared unfortunately.
Wow, well, that's a really good example. And it's interesting you mentioned dreams because if one of the things our unconscious does is when we have a very busy mind, even things from our unconscious, like our dreams, can become blocked. And also our bodily sensations, so you can't even feel your bodily sensations properly. But as you start to practice mindfulness, then these things kind of become more prominent. But I'll give you more opportunity to speak at the end of the session. But thank you very much for sharing that, Kik.
Okay, thank you too.
Cheers. Okay, so we'll do some more questions and answers towards the end. But it's really nice to hear from Kik there and the benefits he's getting from it. So I'm going to talk to you just to make sure we finish on time about this certified coach mindful training program that we've got. So this is limited spaces, so it's 25 maximum. We've had some bookings already, so it's less than that now. But I'm going to limit it to that so that if we have when we run our webinars and things, the numbers are not too high, so that I can answer everyone's questions. Okay, and I'll make sure that I can do that. So that's the reason why it's limited to that main number of people. It's just going to be on a first come first served basis as long as you've done the application. And now I'm going to explain to you what this coach mindful training will involve. Okay, so then you can decide whether this is the right thing for you or the wrong thing for you, because it's not for everyone. So if you do book this coach mindful training and I'm happy with your application, and in terms of the application, it's a short process, it probably takes a couple of minutes, but it gives me an idea where you are. You don't necessarily have to be a coach, and you actually don't have to have even practiced mindfulness because it's a full program. Okay, so it starts with a one-to-one coaching session that you have with me on the phone or on Skype, and in that one-to-one session, I actually give you some examples of mindful coaching so you can experience it. But also, I get to listen to you and your needs and what you hope to get over the next 12 months of the Coach Mindful training. So that's really important beginning part of the process. You can kind of set your um, vision for the next 12 months, which I hope would also include getting clients and actually getting work as well. So we could talk about that as well as everything else. After that, what's also included is an 8-week mindful training program. So this is called Live Mindful, and I'll show you what that looks like. So this is normally people do this program. Here's what it is. It's called the Live Mindful course, and it's an 8-session course. And if I go down, it's got each of these different themes. So automatic pilot, dealing with barriers, mindfulness of breath, etc. Okay, that's normally, as you can see, that's normally 147. So that's included too. And in those 8 weeks, it's got all the mindfulness meditation downloads. It's got all the home practice you need to do every week. And it's entirely online, like the rest of this program. So that takes 8 weeks. So after you've done this one-to-one session with me, you work on that for 8 weeks. You do the mindfulness practice every day for those 8 weeks. And hopefully you're in a more mindful state by then. You'd also be able to offer that Live Mindful course to your clients in the future. So if you're working with clients and you want them to become more mindful, you'd be able to offer that and you'd make some money out of that too. You'd get a percentage of that. After you've done that mindful training for 8 weeks, we have another one-to-one coaching session for an hour. Okay, so we talk about how that program went, what you liked about it, what you didn't like about it, whether you managed to do the meditations every day or not. I could listen to some, like I did with Kik just briefly now. I could listen to, what your thoughts are, what worked for you, what didn't work for you, etc. And I'd also prepare you for the teacher training program, which is the main part of the program. So the 10-week teacher training program is called Teach Mindful, and this is also a separate program that other people book onto. I'll show you it here. And this is the program here, which people are applying for, and it's half full already, to be honest. That starts on the 22nd of September. So it's a Sunday at 2 o'clock London time, but it's all recorded. It's all online as well. And this is a live teaching. So like I'm teaching you live right now, it'd be a 2-hour, well, unless you're watching recording this would be 2 hours once a week for 10 weeks. And you work with a co-coach every week too, mindfulness co-coach, and you actually do your training that way. Okay. This is the main chunk of the program. And you can actually get certified at that point too. This has got all the information here on Teach Mindfulness Online. And these are some, you can see some coaches who've actually done this just from the last program I've put in. We've run this program several times now. We've got people all over the world doing it, mainly UK and Europe, but we get people from Australia and also the United States. So you get to meet them all online. Several coaches have actually ended up working with other coaches after doing this and running workshops together, which I highly encourage. So you do that teacher training. After you've done that teacher training, you're actually ready to start doing some mindfulness teaching. So you can start working very slowly and gradually. But I'd also listen to your feedback to ensure that you're doing that correctly. So by November, mid-November, you can start practicing teaching mindfulness in very small groups or one-to-one, and get some feedback from me on a monthly basis. So after you've done that teacher training, again, you have a one-to-one coaching. So I find out how you found the teacher training, what worked for you, what didn't work for you, what's the next step for you. So it's important for me that if you're doing this program so that you can teach mindfulness to your clients, if that's the reason why you're doing it, then I want to make sure that you are doing that, most importantly, in an authentic and in an appropriate way. Okay, I don't want to be able to offer a mindfulness training which then you go off and teach incorrectly, or you've got the wrong kind of approach to it. So that's why it's really important that we have these one-to-one coaching sessions. I can be absolutely clear about that, and you can come back to me with questions. And also to help you to get clients. So we will have some marketing sections as well, because of it's an investment, this training, and I want you to be able to get that investment back as soon as possible. So I've gone from not being a mindfulness teacher at all to teaching, doing a lot of these teacher trainings, having written books and stuff. And I want to share all that experience with you. So I'll do that too, partly in the one-to-one coaching and partly in the monthly sessions. So the rest of the support then from November all the way back around to August would be monthly coaching sessions with the other people doing the Coach Mindful training too. So all together on a monthly basis. And we do this kind of webinar process, but it'd be more interactive. And it would be teaching a different theme about mindfulness. So it might be about self-compassion. It might have some sections on marketing if that's what people want. It'll have a session about teaching mindfulness in groups compared to one-to-one. It could be how do you teach acceptance. It could be all sorts of different themes. Using mindfulness for stress, for resilience, how to use it in the corporate workplace. What about people having problems with emailing? Is there a way to bring a mindfulness to that? All these kinds of things. So that runs through to the rest of the 12 months. Throughout the process, you have a mindfulness co-coach, and in all the programs that I've run, this is what people say is the most helpful out of all the programs. This is because they can work with somebody else on a weekly basis during the teacher training, and at least on a monthly basis. And you just call each other up and you talk about how the program's going, what's working, what's not working. And I try to assign co-coaches which are roughly the same level of experience as yourself. So if you've been a coach for 30 years, I wouldn't put you with someone who's an absolute beginner, but someone else who's got a similar level of experience as yourself. If I'm happy with all that you've done, and there's a short assignment involved too, and I listen to the interactions that you've had with me, if I'm happy that you're able to teach it effectively, then I would certify you as a Coach Mindful Coach. And I would also have you listed on my website, which gets quite a lot of traffic. So you'll be able to get some work through that way too. So that's the program if that's something that you're interested in. So if you want to go for that, then what you need to do is you need to go to this website called coachmindful.com, which I've developed specifically for that. If this sounds good to you, I'll show you where that is. Here it is. This is Coach Mindful. It starts with a very short video, just outlining the program like I have today. It tells you all the things that are involved. You just need to click on this where it says apply today. Okay, or you could read through all this, which is what I've explained again, and click apply now. And once you click that apply now, I can click it right now too to show you. It goes to this little form here. So you fill out that little form, and that comes through to me, and then I can let you know if this is the right program for you or not. So that's a free thing to do. So if you're not too sure, then it's probably best to just fill that in, and then we can get back in touch with each other and find out if it's the right program for you or not. So if you do that, and I think it's the right program for you, and you want to go for it, you're happy with it, then all you need to do is pay this initial deposit of $197. The actual cost of the program is there's two rates on it. Either you pay $197 a month for the 12 months, or you can pay all up front, which is £1,997, which is basically £2,000. Okay, so you can choose between one of those two options, and then that's a 12-month training program that's for you. In my experience, teaching mindfulness to a group of people, if you teach mindfulness as an 8-week course, most people charge around £250 to £300 if the person's part of a group. So if you've got 8 people in the group, then that actually pays for this training in one go. If you can find 8 people to pay £250, so I think it's a very reasonable investment to make. That's how I got into it initially, through doing Mindfulness Teacher Training, of course. But in terms of the key dates, you need to think about this date, the 22nd of September, which is when the teacher training takes place. That will be the 10-week course. And if you can't make that at 2 o'clock on 22nd of September, then every Sunday, over 10 Sundays, then remember it is recorded. But I would recommend you are able to get to a decent number of those, because it feels different when it's live compared to recorded. So recorded is a good backup. But this is all the different stuff that you get. And for anyone who applies today, I'm going to have a little bonus of, well, actually it's a big bonus, because I'm going to give 3 of the 8-week courses, which are worth £150 each, extra thrown in as well. You just need to make that application today, which takes a few minutes. So it's good to be able to give a few extra things for people who made the effort to come in live today. So I'm going to do that too. So you can give those 3 8-week courses to your, to your parents or your friends or your clients, whoever you want, and you let me know, and you give me the 3 email addresses for those 3 people, and I will give them that. But it's only if you apply today for this. That's not the normal thing that I do. Okay, so I know a few people have been keen to ask questions and got a few hands up and stuff. So I'll answer your questions now. So do you have any questions about the program? Okay, I know, Kik, you've got your hand up, so we can continue our conversation. So I'll unmute you. Hi, Kik. Did you have any more kind of questions or comments?
No, thank you, not yet.
All right. Okay. Thanks. Okay, it's just that there's a hand up symbol, so that's fine. Anyone else? Okay, I'll be online for a few more minutes, so if you do have any questions, then let me know. You can click that symbol with your hand up, or you could just use the chat window. Okay, I think everyone's happy there. I think it's quite clear. Looks like there's no other further questions. So I'll just leave it on this slide for you to think about a little bit further if you want to go for it or not. But feel free to just send me an email. If this is not the right program for you, then I could let you know. Maybe there's a teacher training that you want to do, which we have, or maybe you just want to do the basic Live Mindful course. And if you want to do that one, then you can send me an email and I can give you a code so you can do that a little bit more cheaply than Mindful 7. Or maybe you just want to read the mindfulness book at the moment and just get a feel for mindfulness from that point of view. So I hope you found it helpful. Thank you very much for giving up your time to listen. I appreciate all the people that did that. And if you want to stay in touch, then again, as I said, send me an email at shamash@learnmindfulness.co.uk, and I could answer any of your questions in that way. Hope you have a lovely day, and I'll catch you again soon.